There's a massive question a lot of people would ask is that if they're working, why so much imports? The largest single trade refinery in the world is the Dangote refinery. And again, I say, the Dangote refinery came in to solve the problem of non-refining.
In my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So where do they play? What do they play in? I know we've spoken about prices. I mean, it's not just the Dangote refinery. In 2025, I know the PART2 one came online. Worry Zone just came. Was it this year or
sometime this year?
Sometime this year, the Worry came
sometime
up.
last year, just
ending
at the
close in December last quarter, right? So we have this refineries come on. Surely that competition again because it's deregulated now. It's competition. Competition drives eventually makes the system efficient and drives down those prices, you know. And again, I will look at it from what you said as what we've discussed today, and people just dropped it based on whatever whatever pricing model they have, but the price dropped, and that's what we're seeing is that competition, you know, between people. But where for us to fully enjoy these subsidies in the long run, right, and in the short term, where does these refineries, the 4 governmental ones, the modular ones coming up, Dangote refinery, how do they play and how would they play efficiently to ensure that this subsidy makes sense?
Okay, so brilliant question, Dami. And the first thing I'll tell you is this. Have you ever driven into a fuel station to buy crude? The answer is
no, of course.
And it goes back to what we said when we started this conversation. The role of a refinery is to crack. And anybody that does physics, chemistry, fractional distillation.
Yeah.
So it's going to take input, which is crude oil, and then it's going to give you a different range of productions. Gas, diesel, so many things. One fundamental of refineries is that every crude has an assay. So every crude has a property.
Yeah.
And based on the property of that crude, it affects what you can bring out.
Yeah.
So let's start from the bottom rump, a modular refinery. The modular refineries are less complex in terms of cracking.
Yes.
And it also means that more often than not, you find out these modular refineries, they can crack into gas oil. A lot of them.
Yeah.
Some of them fuel oil. So you find out that in terms of regional supply, the first people that benefit in terms of subsidy and in terms of the supply chain is the people around them.
Yes.
So they're fully functional to sort out those regional distributions. What is the greatest challenge for them? 2 things. Number 1, input. So if they don't have enough crude, their dynamics are skewed. They can't go and import so little crude, quote and unquote. So they have to feed off from someone who has crude oil operations to give them crude. So what do? They play in that supply chain. The second thing is that it becomes a commercial decision. Do I want to do only gas oil? Or do I want to get an RFCC? An RFCC is a catalytic cracker. And what it means is that it makes your refinery be able to blend things like petrol, naphtha, different. But it comes at a cost. So if you look at your P&L and your CapEx items, the question is that, do I want to scale to that level? So the first thing, where do they play in terms of subsidies and everything? They're able to compete in there, and I always say regional. But don't forget, if what you call it, a modular refinery is in an area where she has a berth, where she has a jetty, then she can also play in the export side.
Yes.
Now, if these products, quote and unquote, are not required here, she can export it. Because with a subsidy gone, it means that pricing commercially should be a commercial decision.
Yes.
So that's them. Then we move up. We've got national refineries, and we had 4 of them. Kaduna, Port Harcourt, Warri, and so let's say 2 in Port Harcourt. If you start a car and drive it for 20 years, it can still run. But it means that you must not miss your service milestones. What that does is that if something is bad, you fix it. If something is good, you drain your oil. There's so many things to keep it running optimally. But every mechanical equipment has its best by date.
Yeah.
I believe the 4 refineries we have reached their best by date. So a lot of time, there was a lot of conversation around Port Harcourt is working. Warri is working. There's a massive question a lot of people would ask is that if they're working, why so much imports? So that's one angle. If they're working ideally, then back to what we said about the modular refinery, they should deal with an enhanced supply chain in that environment. If that happens, then what it means is back to the same thing. The greatest issue is crude. Is there enough crude to feed them?
To feed the feedstock.
If it has gotten to a best buy date, then the question is that why keep it if it is no longer efficient? Do I sell as is? If you sell as is, and don't forget, if we're talking about the 4 national refineries, then we now start to talk of conversations around energy security, availability, affordability, accessibility.
Yeah.
So that's a different ballgame. But where do they also play? Ideally, in a supply chain that is fully deregulated, they should be able to affect, quote and unquote, regional community and the export market. So look at things like fuel oil. You find out that Nigeria has metamorphosed. There was a time where, way back, a lot of commercial customers used to run on fuel oil. As the supply became irregular, they found other ways. So you find a lot of people are running on gas, some on diesel. So if the technology they're using is cleaner, then the chances that they'll go back to fuel oil is less.
Yes.
So you find out there are other countries that need that fuel oil, and it becomes an export market for the 4 refineries. Efficiency is a different thing based on age. Then finally, the largest single train refinery in the world is the Dangote refinery.
Okay.
And again, I say, the Dangote refinery came in to solve a problem of non-refining. So let's start from the big macros. The more they export, and let's start from export, it means that in terms of balance of payments for Nigeria, it's better. The president did something and said that with crude oil, let's do in Naira.
Yes.
Which means that they don't have to go and look for foreign exchange.
Yes.
He's doing that to try and sort out macro and micro.
Yes.
In terms of economy, monetary and fiscal. That's what he's trying to sort.
Yeah.
But it also means that in that same stroke, the Dangote refinery is also trying to supply into the Nigerian market. And then the question becomes that, why should we go and import if a refinery is supplying everything the country needs? Now, this is my own opinion on that. While they can solve that, it means that we're not a free market. And we need to be extremely clear about this. A free market allows entry and exit. While the Dangote refinery must recoup her investment, there must also be consumer protection. There must also be business viability for the other people who have been in the sector and are never going to go into refinery. Now, the regulator, and it goes back to what we said in terms of a guiding template or principle template. It means that if they're saying today 70% local, 30% import, it means that the mechanism from both of them revealing a price discovery is that the day that the imports are lower in terms of landing costs than the refining for any reason, then it means that that thing must tweak. And so it's the guide. So you keep iterating till you get to what a perfect world is. But a perfect world will never be 100% in either side. What is the nexus of the Dangote refinery? It will always give you, as we speak today, because of its high Nelson index, it will always give you quality products compared to anything else. So what it does mean is that the regulator has to set a standard and say, look, for instance, if this import is going to happen, and it must happen, this is the benchmark you need to bring in products at.
Yeah.
If the refinery gets a waiver in terms of sulfur content here or there, they must also get that waiver. It cannot be an afterthought. But it also means that there's something, if I go to the website and say, today it is 70% local, it is 30% import, it is 60% local, and there must be something that points people in that direction. So I think we've taken where the refineries are.
You know, this is a topic on its own.
Yeah,
that's amazing. You know, the next misconception is, I think you've touched on this already, but I'm just going to say it. Fuel subsidies removal will immediately lead to economic growth. You've spoken about this already, and when I spoke to people, they expected that as soon as it was announced, boom, we're good. We're kings and queens. Everything has been sorted.
Yeah.
So I think, without me giving my opinion on it, just in brief words, like, what do you think about that misconception?
And I go back to what we said when we talked about implementation and communication. So an implementation has happened. Now, the guys on the side that run government are seeing different causes and effects, reactions. But if they keep it to themselves, then every other person is still holding on to their misconception. And you see, there's a lot of things that have processes to them. The economy will never change by the stroke of a brush. It's a process. Some things must happen regularly and consistently.
Yeah.
If that is going to happen, then you begin to see, today, if you wanted to change $1, I think you're about 1,550.
Yeah, 1.5. Yeah.
We've been in 1,700.
Yes.
So it's safe to say the people on the side of the government can say, look, these are the things that we've been talking about, and these are improvements. They're right. But you can't tell me that after 8 months. So it goes back to the misconception. If I know, and then someone comes on national TV and tells you, guys, this is what we're doing. We think that by so and so time, these are where the rates will come to. Because you can't hear that on one side. And then on the other side, you hear that customs is increasing their FOB rates by 4%, increasing the... You can't have policy inconsistencies. And you must clearly communicate. These fallacies come from a point of not knowing. So I do believe that while some things are happening and are positive, recently I believe that there was a 12% mortgage scheme.
Oh, okay.
That I believe AfriInvest is the one that is running it.
Okay.
But what it means is that 1 trillion naira is coming from the Federation coffers into that so people can own homes. Laudable.
That's great.
So, but what you need to do is that someone on the government side needs to be saying, by month 4, this is what we assume the effect will be in terms of home ownerships. There's a colleague of mine who explains to me that one thing I will also do is that it's going to trigger different kind of credit products from other banks. Because if 1 trillion has gone into a hole, you're not going to lend into that 1 trillion because your rates are higher. So you must go and find other ways of banking and giving people access to credit along some other lines that is not housing. But what does this do? It stimulates the economy. What is the greatest way we look at it? We now begin to look at our GDP. We now begin to look at inflation. These things are a process. But Dami, this process, we can't wait till it happens. We must communicate. If not, we'll keep on getting these.
So another misconception, Nigeria cannot afford fuel subsidy. That's why we're taking it off. We spoke about the 10 billion annually, averagely, adjusting for inflation and anything. A lot of people I spoke to, they actually said, it's because we don't have the money to do this, or we don't, that's why we're taking it off. No one really knows. We know, I know. The layman, when I spoke to them, maybe it's the group of people I spoke to, said they don't know, they just heard. Maybe it's because, they said it even in pidgin. It's because we don't get money for the country now. So they're looking at their situations as well to look at the situation of the country to make that decision. I don't know what your thoughts is about this.
I think that it could be, and I seldom have answers that are neither here nor there. But this is one of those questions that for me is, it could be both ways. If I have 100 million naira and I have 4 objectives, the day I create 3 other objectives and I've made it 7 objectives, it means that 100 million naira is strained. Now, I said that to say this, so let's go back into Nigeria. The first thing that triggers Nigeria more often than not is how many barrels of crude oil we produce. If we were at 2 million or 2.2 or 2.5 million barrels of crude oil production a day, that means we won't be having this conversation. Remember, there were times back in one military administration where I said, look, Nigeria's problem is not revenue, it's how to spend it.
I will act like I remember. I can't. But yeah, thank you. Tell me.
But you see, the truth of the matter is that it means that there's a lot of misconceptions, and that's what we're talking about. If the revenue meets the expectation, then what of the expenditure? If you create additional line items that are not accountable, and that's why we've moved from 4 to 7, then you have devoted money or diverted money in what you call environment to things that are totally unproductive. So Nigeria is in the situation she is because of bad management over a long period of time. That is one. So the president thought that, you know what, if to stem this tide, let's even reduce this money that is going to places it doesn't need to go. That is one. But the question is, what happens to the profligate spending on the side of the executive, on the side of legislators, on the types of contracts? You find out that what is happening is that monies are still going to places where they have no business going to. So some of that productive money that quote and unquote should be revenue is filtered away to spurious expenditure that is not necessary. I'll give you one typical example. If you buy a brand new car, the chances are that you're going to use that car for the life of the asset for 5 years. One thing that we constantly do in Nigeria is that every time someone resumes at a post, they buy a brand new car. So what it means is that that money has been spent on a brand new car and the old one is sold at book value. You've already just killed an expenditure. Because if I've used the car for 1 year, why am I buying it at book value? Something as simple as that. There are principles of accounting that guide these things. So it goes with, we're in a situation where we are because we spent so much money on some things that are not productive. So subsidy is gone. Why is India still being able to subsidize? Why is Malaysia still looking at subsidizing? Why are so many countries? It's the management of these resources and where you devote it to. If you put 100 million naira in a business, it's to gain money in that business. You're not an NGO. So your aim is that I'm going to devote this money to productive outcomes. If I grow it to 120 million, then I'm growing the business. Nigeria needs to begin to think like a commercial entity. There's this tag where we hear a lot of time, the government will say Nigeria is open for business.
Yes.
So we must be. I'm happy about one thing that happened just at the end of 2024. The Seplat deal.
Yeah.
The Owando deal. There's one in Mauritius, Chapel, I believe, if my memory serves me right. It shows you that there's been a shift, either by error, omission, or intention. And then people who had no confidence in coming here to put money in have now found that confidence. So if someone is selling something as a foreign guy, and a local company is able to muscle up the financing, banks are not, they don't give out credit as confetti. But it means that if people are milling money together to be able to do this transaction, they believe that the outcome of this transaction is a profit. So you see, what has happened is that we're where we are because of poor management, but it means that going forward, there must be intent. Back again, communication. Because that is the only way, if in future we're going to subsidize something,
we understand.
We understand why we're subsidizing it. We understand the cause and effect. Look at CNG. CNG is being subsidized. Yeah. But you see, it's a chain reaction. And when you compare the cost of CNG at 250 or 350 compared to 997, there's a compelling argument.
Yeah.
But the point is also that you need to scale. What is the greatest challenge with CNG today? Still infrastructure.
But those infrastructures are very expensive.
And it means that if they're very expensive, then you need to devote capital that is long suffering, not commercial rates.
It has to be patient capital.
It has to be patient capital. And what brings patient capital? It's an environment that proves to be stable and can return investment. You can't have policy inconsistencies. So you see how we've been able, these are two sides of the argument. But I mean, I could pick either.
Understood. Okay. There's so much, so I'm picking like the best ones right now. Subsidy removal will end fuel scarcity. I'll just leave that as there.
Another misnomer.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the case of subsidy removal, in my opinion, that will end scarcity. It was refining that would end scarcity. And why do I say so? If you can't refine in an economy, it means that every time the closest supply point to you, Nigeria specifically, will be Lome. If it's not Lome, then it's Europe. So if you bring in a vessel from Europe, you're looking at a 14 to 21 day turnaround time. If you bring it in from Lome, on the other hand, then you're looking at maybe 72 hours plus or minus. If you refine it locally, you're looking at 1 hour or 2 hours. Yes. Because if your station is in Ekpe, you just drive in. So I think that being able to refine has solved some of the supply gaps. If you look at the December now, for instance,
I was going to say that
there were no issues
of December, last quarter, expect scarcity. No?
And there was no issue in this December because we were locally refining. Now let's go back to the NNPC side. When NNPC was the main supplier, you found out that there were supply gaps. If there's a weather issue and that STS cannot happen, that's a delay. If you don't have enough in storage or Papa is blocked, for instance, it becomes a crisis. But these were still things that were not properly managed. So right now, what has happened is that because we have some activities locally refining, the turnaround time or speed to market is much shorter. The capacity is also larger. It still does not say that that is the only way we should do it. There must still be that balance. But what you find out is that subsidy wasn't the trigger. Some might say that because of the price, everybody can sell at the price that is commercially viable.
Yeah, so there's that misconception that, listen.
But look at it this way. If you look at the fact that the refinery is not optimal, we talked about how some local refineries, some modular refineries don't get feed crude. So it wasn't a subsidy issue because the potential to sell at a commercial rate is there, but they didn't have feedstock.
Okay.
The Dangote refinery, for instance, still suffers feedstock and has to import.
I can argue with you that if you import, and I know I can sell it because it's a deregulated market now, I can import it just interim. So therefore, it will make me want to, you know what, I need. Because again, it's not efficient to shut down a refinery.
Absolutely.
Right? It takes hours. It's actually extra money to bring it back up again. So I would rather just import because I know I will still be able to find a way to sell it because it's a free market. So inevitably, subsidy still has a part to play.
Valid point.
Yes.
Valid point. But you see, as you say that, and I won't argue with that thought, we must also know that there's some triggers that regardless of subsidy going or not. But I believe and I agree with you that the framework for a free market by removing subsidy has brought commercial, how will I put it? There's a commercial argument now to be made. And if I can land it at a price, like you rightly said, then why not? So going back to saying a free market, and again, I cannot say this enough, in a free market, we must do both.
Yeah.
But you're right in that. I won't argue with that.
No, I think it's either or. It's a trigger, but it's not the main.
It's not alone. Okay. So let's say it won't, on its own, it wouldn't have solved.
So the subsidy actually is, again, maybe for us we can understand this, but this is our misconceptions that people don't understand, and they're going around that. Why is the price this? Why is it so high? Why is this? And everybody's like, this, that. So it's a case of understanding.
Absolutely.
I remember I went to speak somewhere and, this was on power, and they were like, why do we not have power? And there was someone there from one of the Gencos. It became a case of, back and forth between the Gencos and transmission on that panel. But it was so good that everyone left that place with
better
understanding and less blame on be it government or be it either party, So I think I do agree. The more we have these discussions and people understand in a friendly way and more understanding, sometimes it has to be dumbed down a bit so that even for me to understand it, a lot more, there's some things that needs to, come down, then we can go back up. Okay. As we're rounding up, in your opinion, subsidy is removed, right? Who are the winners? Who are the losers?
That's quite an interesting question. And let's start from the last point you raised in terms of scarcity. So if we anchor back on what you said, that look, it now makes a commercially viable argument to either import or whatever it is, sell at a free market price. So the general populace, and there was a time where when there's scarcities, people say, remove whatever you need to remove, let it just be available.
Yes, correct.
So the winners are that if you drive into station A, B, C, D today, you can buy your fuel and go. It means that the time you spent on queues are things of the past. So 220 million people are winners. It means that the bus driver, Korope, Damfo, can drive into a station and know that
There will be few.
I want to go and pick passengers in 10 minutes. He's not planning a 3-hour wait. He knows that there's fuel. He's not even thinking about it. So now he's like, do I want to buy a 920? Do I want to buy a 960? And sometimes you buy at the higher price.
Due to other values.
Other values, because I'm in a hurry.
Yeah.
I think the pump integrity here is great.
Better, yes.
So that's a winner. There's a lot in the industry that is done on speculation. I buy a PFI, I do this. The market will move. Speculation. It will mean that for someone whose job was to speculate, you are losing out in this transaction because this now demands an entire supply chain. I'm buying, I'm trucking, and I'm selling. So you have to have competencies across the whole line. That's also a win for these people who are integrated oil and gas players.
Yes.
It's a loss for someone who was a briefcase portfolio guy. So now look at it at the country on its own now. It means that in terms of revenues that are coming from oil and gas, in terms of taxes, so there's this 1% NMDPRA fee and everything, you've been able to generate value across the value chain. I also want to believe that quality of our products is much better now. It was a joke in the past, with all due respect. We haven't still gotten there. But it also means that in terms of quality of the products within the space, Nigeria, whatever is being brought in, they're much better. Is it safe to say people are held to higher accounts? I would say yes. But data is still a loser. The quality in terms of our data has not been enhanced yet, Dami. It's not much better than before the subsidy. In fact, it seems to be a bit more opaque. So that's where I'll hang it in terms of winners and losers.
Losers. So the public, some people in the public saying, oh, we're paying higher.
Yeah.
Versus availability.
Yeah, but for those people saying we're paying higher,
is that a balance?
It's a case of the people who are saying I'm paying higher are also saying it's available.
So what would they take?
So they'll take the availability.
Okay.
Because the point is this: if it's low and it's not available, then it means that the spiral effect in terms of loss of revenue is much, much worse. 3 hours in a retail outlet.
Yeah.
Because automatically, don't forget, if I drive a Korope into one place and buy fuel at 970, I've passed it on to the customer. So the customer has paid more. But the customer is not looking at it that, should I pay this 300 naira from so and so to so place? What I want to go and get there, if I don't go, so it's a stimulant. It's a trigger. So I think a lot of people have won, a few have lost.
I love the angle.
Yeah.
You know. We've spoken about efficiency and transparency already. How did it affect cost of doing business? What's the impact on businesses, of the removal of subsidy?
I think it's a case of the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Let's start with the ugly.
The ugly is that some businesses have shut down because they just could not afford to scale. Those who were buying petrol in the generators.
Small businesses.
The very, very small businesses lost out, and most of them folded up. That's the ugly. The bad was that it took us so long to get to somewhere where we now seem to be able to scale because of policy inconsistencies, red tape, and most importantly, I can't say this enough, lack of data to plan. That's the bad. The good is that some businesses that died were bought over by some businesses who could scale, who could get funding. The renewable energy space is a major benefactor
exactly
in terms of the good. So what it is that with the subsidy, there were a lot of compelling arguments for renewable that were not flying because it was much cheaper to just go and buy subsidized petrol. But now the renewable energy space is blossoming because when you look at band A, first and foremost, what's the cost per kilowatt hour in terms of this with my inverter vis-a-vis? Yes. And then you have some people now who have gone off grid.
Yes.
I know people who have gone off grid totally. So you see, in this same dichotomy we talked about, there's the good, there's the bad, and the ugly, and those are three different angles.
You know, I was going to touch on renewables because that's you as well. You know, I see your post a lot about renewables. It's something that it's slowly catching up.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, for me, it's not just about what is cool. It's cool. Like, you know, Tesla is cool. You know, all those things are cool. But for the public, it's more on value. Cost, value added. The upfront cost is high. The value over that same period of time is what people need to understand. Now, subsidy is gone. It makes people say, okay, let me pay attention to what value renewables is going to bring to me compared to this. Do you think that's gaining a lot more traction? I know about the CNG, you know, the alternative, but in terms of renewable itself, that impact of, again, I know there's no data, you know, and but in your opinion, is it quick enough? The effect that again, private sector has a lot to play, because you know there's a limit the government can do in terms of instigating. What is I don't want to ask too many questions in one, but you get the gist of it. Like, is it really picking up, or is it just, again, noise? Is it just speculation, and it's just the rich people? Is it just the rich that can afford it? So,
you see, what renewable energy has done for us as a country is that we can do much better in terms of scale. But infrastructural credit is starting to come into this thing. So what it's saying is that if you're going to put a solar system in this place and go off grid, in the past, you had to pay 100% for it. Now you have energy as a service. Now you have where people can say pay small. But it means that to get to those stage, it means that there's a compelling argument to say that people are able to move their businesses forward.
Okay.
As long as they're able to get revenues to pay monthly. One of the things I do in terms of renewable is that in one of the companies I work at, Aiona, we're very clear about the fact that there's a need to take public lighting, public street lighting.
Yeah.
We need to take it off the grid. There's no need to put so much pressure on the grid that is not. So let's put solar lights. I heard the Lagos State is trying to do an initiative in terms of solar lights now. And it's something that I think that they needed to have done years back. But they need to gazump. I'm trying to look at how companies like InfraCredit can give credit to people who are making solar lights, making solar inverters, and quote and unquote, give them some comfort so that they can continue producing at a faster rate. At TradeGrid, one of the things we're doing is that we're telling people that your retail station, for instance, why are you using diesel at X amount? So we're getting people on what you call a TradeGrid Plus to install solar systems. And that's what we're doing. So it runs their pumps, but it's also a compelling argument because they're looking at their revenues and they're paying small. It's like energy as a service. Finally, what will tip that direction more is that you find out that China is the renewable capital of the world. So if you combine USA, Germany, and one other country, China has
the growth over the past years.
But two things have happened. The first thing is that they've grown over the years, but their technology advancements are also great. So what do we as Nigeria need to do? I would be very, very happy to operate our solar company today from somewhere in Lagos or Oyo.
In terms of, do you mean manufacturing?
Absolutely. Yes. So we must backward integrate. Dami, that's the only way we're going to be able to scale. Mission 300 that happened in Tanzania was brilliant because it seems that it's moved away from the talk shop and it's holding companies accountable. You hear a company like C Solar, you hear REA, that's government, but you see, everybody's now focused on how can I gazump? How can I scale? But you see, to be able to scale, back to what we said, patient capital. But Dami, the most important thing for us to scale, we must find a way of backward integration. We must be able to say, okay, we've got lithium in Nasarawa.
would
We've
drop
got this.
prices
So
as well.
it will drop prices.
Yeah.
And what it means is that supply chain, in terms of order to cash, is shorter.
Shortened,
But it
yes.
also means that knowledge must increase in those spaces.
True.
So it's not just a case of I'm going to come and site a plant in your, or I'm just going to import it.
You have to think
No.
about training. You have to
So I
think
need to
about
begin to train
the
and then
personnel,
pass on that
yes.
knowledge and skill. So that for every 5 or 6 solar companies in Nigeria, 2 or 3, it's a good start, are local and can produce here.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. We could keep going and going. Like, I'm having so much fun. So, looking back, moving forward, if we could go back, I know I've asked this in several ways. If we could rewind to 2023, would you still make that decision to remove him?
I would. Personally, I would.
Okay.
And I've said this and I'll keep on saying this. That's one part of that statement, whether it was off script or not, that I actually did agree with. But I would implement it in so many different ways, much, much better. Would I have phased it? That's a possibility. But you see, it's either or. You can't say, I'm going to phase it this way. I'm not going. So he took a decision based on what he knew at that point in time as the president. So I would have removed it, but I would have phased it in a different way.
Okay.
And going back to what I'm saying in communication, I would have sold a plan, not just say it's gone. So I'll spend another 2 or 3 minutes. It's gone because this is how much we spent in 2022. This is what we want to do in terms of kilometers of road, in terms of renewable energy, in terms of this. By the time we do all these 3 things, we think that, quote and unquote, the economy can grow by X. Value in your pocket can grow by Y. So you're sending an outlier, as in you're sending something that doesn't take away hope. But I would have removed it.
Okay.
But just manage.
So from
it
what
better.
I hear is great decision. Should be communicated a lot better. And tell us what.
Correct.
it will be
Implementation milestones need
Okay.
to be shared.
Okay. So subsidy removal was the best decision. Again,
Well, not best. It was a great decision. But when you say best,
rephrase.
Great. Yeah.
Was a great
It was a
decision.
great, in my opinion, yes.
In looking at the situation,
Yes.
but again, we discussed this. If you go back and see the attempts before it was done, so that phasing some will argue that might not work. It's taking it by the owner and saying, listen, we'll figure it out as we go along. So it's possible, but as long as, and that takes me to that next question. What's your 5-year horizon? Looking at what has happened so far, subsidy removal, in the next 5 years, what do you expect?
So if I look at 2 things, and remember we talked about what happened in 2024 in terms of the oil and gas deals. The first thing is this: it has showed that Nigeria, quote and unquote, is ready for doing business. You have some brilliant minds in the industry in the government, who have now moved into trade positions. I'm a massive fan of Dr. Jumoke Oduwole. For me, she can do no wrong. So you find out that someone like that is crafting and speaking on, this is where Nigeria is. A year down the line, you're getting more FDIs. 2 years, you're consolidating FDIs. By year 3, it has become a destination haven for investments, but also a manufacturing hub for West Africa. And let's take it step by step. If we take West Africa, we can take Sub-Saharan Africa. And I'm talking about manufacturing. The Dangote refinery has come into that space. So it has taken a step in the right direction. If policy consistency, and it's very, very clear about this, they must drive how we do things. We must be intentional. So that by 4 and 5 years, we can't have eroded enough what has happened over the last administration for 8 years, because it seems like we didn't move. But it will be setting the tone for whoever continues this journey. And then we must de-emphasize politics. I think by year 4, we should be able to get there. De-emphasize all this political and begin to look for the best 11 to run this country. So 5 years down the line, we're manufacturing hub for West Africa. That is one thing I want to really, really see. GDP value, I'm not an economist, so I won't forecast that. But it means that we would have eroded the lack of trust and have perfect examples. So this is where we were 5 years ago. This is where we are now. And that will now become the basis of where we're going in the next 5 years.
So in terms of the
But
down...
sorry, just before coming down to Nigeria, what do I see? The Energy Bank comes up this quarter, hopefully. So that becomes a destination in terms of anything energy is birthed in the Energy Bank. And it's in Abuja. It means that we must be able to spin off and build so many important businesses. I would say primary and ingredient for Nigeria first, but also for sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay, so taking it down to the downstream, what would you expect? What percentage of renewables do you think? Do you think more will be converted to CNG? Do you think even to LPG? Like, do you think consumer behavior will really change based on this subsidy consistency in that?
Interesting question. Now, I'm not so sure change is the word. It will evolve. But Dami, in a country where energy poverty is well above 70%, it means that as we transition, even in downstream, two things will happen. Technology will begin to play a better part. Renewable energy in terms of cost management and power management will happen. It also means that in Rwanda, when we were then, they used to say something called basket of products. It means that you begin to drive into retail outlets powered by renewables, but at the same time, you can also fuel your tank with CNG. So it now means they become destination hubs. You can go in and cut your hair. If the forecourt is large enough,
you have
one stop, NFR.
You have your options.
So it just becomes prime property that can offer energy, not oil, energy.
The full thing.
The full thing. Stations will definitely, and we particularly aggressive about that station growth in terms of get off the grid. Get off all this band A and band B. But it also means that a lot of power, as the generating capacity increases, can begin to go towards industries.
Yes.
Productive use of power. It's not just switch on fan, but you see someone is manufacturing. But most importantly, we must be able to generate an economy that now produces more. Downstream, midstream, upstream, and basically industrialization.
I love that. I love that. That was a perfect answer. And you've given me other directions about it. So we're almost done.
Okay.
And my thing is, there's something we do on the show. We ask people what their energy hack is. This is the Energy Hack podcast. So JP, what's your energy hack? What makes you tick? What makes you wake up every day to say, you know what, this energy industry it's mine. You know, I'll leave my impact.
For me, and I think we talked about knowledge. The more people know, the more informed their decisions are. But this is my energy hack. I've spent over 2 decades in this industry. I'm not tired of it. Because for me, I think that every day we wake up, there's a chance to do something new that we didn't know yesterday. But when we know it now, can we do it more efficiently? And then most importantly, can we impact more people with it? That would be my energy hack.
So it's the impact of...
It's impact.
It's impact. That wakes you up every day.
It's impact.
It's obvious with this today on the show. And we really love you that you're on this show. We could have continued for 4 or 5 hours. But, you know, producers are looking at me and saying, we've run out of tape. Definitely we'll have to do this again on several other topics. And we truly, truly appreciate you. But before you go, right here at this camera, I want you to, how can we reach JP?
Okay, so people who know me know that I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. My name is Jide Pratt. There's no two ways about that. If you search it on LinkedIn, I also try to post from time again what I think my thoughts are in terms of energy and how we can get better. So at that, my name is JIDEPRATT. I'm not a Pratt with 1 T, just so that people know. So at Jide Pratt, I've got a YouTube channel there. I'm very, very active on X as well. So that is Caxton, CAXTON_JP. I might not be able to answer to every query I get daily, but I try as much as possible to make sure I do give a response. Cheers.
Thank you so much. That's amazing. We'll definitely, the Energy Hack and your YouTube channel will definitely collaborate a lot more. And with that, I'd like to thank all our listeners. Thank you for following us at the Energy Hack podcast. I want you to like, subscribe, comment, and see you on the next episode of the Energy Hack podcast. Thank you.